Back in 2012, I wrote this book, Undercover Lies, and I talked about two guys of the same sex that got married in the state of Mississippi. In 2015, the Supreme Court ruled in a 5-4 voting that same-sex was legal in all 50 states of the United States. And here we are in 2016, and the Mississippi legislation is in session, and we have a couple of bills that is going with the LGBT community, and a couple of them have died, which is the House Bill 586, where it says that judges are not required to perform same-sex marriage ceremonies. The Senate Bill 2093, Anti-Marriage Equality Bill. House Bill 1258, Transgender Civilization Bill. Senate Bill 2822, Religious Freedom Bill. And a couple of other bills that have died. But we have one bill, the House Bill 1523, which is been deemed as the Religious Liberty Accommodations Act. And I have with me on tonight Mr. Todd Allen of the ACLU to talk with us about this bill. How are you doing this evening?
I'm doing great, AnDerecco. Thanks for having me. I'm here because this bill is proposed by the legislature, and it passed the House of Representatives, and it's now in the Senate. Mm-hmm. Some people are saying that it is probably not going to pass the Senate. But the Senate, both the Senate and the House of Representatives have been making decisions this year where they seem to just they have a conservative majority, and they don't seem to listen to reason. They don't have much discussion. They don't allow room for discussion, and so it may end up passing, even though people say it might not. I want to talk tonight about some reasons that it should not pass.
Okay. Because
if you look at the bill, it on the surface it sounds pretty innocent. It says that a person who has a sincerely held religious belief or moral conviction, is what it says, should never be forced to change that belief by the government. That sounds good, doesn't it? You know, I mean, we don't think the government should go around telling people what to believe, and like you shouldn't go to a church and say y'all have to change your belief, take this cross down because we don't think crosses are legal anymore.
Right.
But the government doesn't do that, right?
You're right. You know? Not supposed
to. Not supposed to. And if it does, at the ACLU, we'd be the first to hear about it. If somebody came up and did something like that, they would call the ACLU and says, my church has been discriminated against. Mm-hmm. That's what religious freedom is supposed to protect. It's protect the government from infringing on what happens inside the church. Okay. Or even what an individual might say about what they believe. The problem is, under the name of religious freedom, they've gone beyond that. Mm-hmm. Okay? They've gone beyond that to say, it's one thing to say, let's protect what people believe. It's another thing for the whole legislative body, the governor, and those who support this bill to say, this is the belief that is right. Right?
Right.
These are the beliefs. They're going to spell it out. We're protecting these particular beliefs. And it says in there, so all sexual relations are between a married man and a married woman within marriage. That's the only way it should be.
Right. I've read that.
It says that you know that there should not. Anyway, it goes on and says more, but then that alone is endorsing a certain particular belief. There are sincere believers across Mississippi who identify as a man, and they're married.
Right.
A woman and a woman are married, and they're faithful to one another, and they're good citizens, but yet this bill is proposing that they can be discriminated against because of their choices that they make.
Right.
So,
so basically this bill is saying that if I own a florist shop,
mm-hmm.
and you have two men or two women that are married come into my shop, I can refuse to service them.
You can, I think what you're talking about is like if they're getting ready for their marriage, because
right.
it says in the bill, any services related to marriage, you know. So once again, why did they pick that particular belief? See, why are they describing the belief? I think the bill would be fine if it just simply said, we should not discriminate against people who have sincerely held religious beliefs. But see, that was already protected by the federal law. Mm-hmm. We didn't need this new law. you're using this law to try to say, we think these are the correct beliefs about who should be married.
Okay.
And that's where they messed up. So there's lots of reasons, though, in addition to the violation of church and state. And church and state exist to make the church stronger and the state as strong as it needs to be. We believe that when the church mixes with the state, it makes the state weaker and the church weaker. When they exist as independent organizations, the church can question the state, and the state can ask questions about the church. They can speak to each other. You know, they each have their areas where they can have their authority, each different kinds of authority. But this is an encroachment of state telling different churches. Think about what they're doing. They're telling every Christian church in Mississippi that believes in same-gender marriages that your belief is wrong.
So that's basically what it boils down to. We got these people that are trying to make this decision on how your church should believe and how it should think and how it should operate.
And this is the result of, yes, and this is the result of years and years of a lot of sermons from preachers who are preaching an idea that I think is kind of dangerous. Here's what they're doing. They're preaching against what they're calling secularism. And they're saying, oh, all these secularists. Well, a secularist doesn't believe anything. They just simply believe that the government should not be endorsing religion. So a secularist believes that. So they want to say that secularists are threatening the church. No, we're not. I'm a secularist when it comes to government. And I believe that government should be a place where we don't legislate our particular beliefs about who Jesus was,
right,
or who Buddha was, you know. So the other point is that even from a scientific perspective, we know so much more about our bodies than we used to. This law spells out marriage is between a man and a woman, and then it goes on to say biologically male, biologically female.
Right, I read that today where it was talking about the biologic and the genetics actually written in the bill. And it's like, 16 pages? The one I read was 16 pages long.
Yeah.
And so...
I'll see if I can find it. But, yeah, so go on.
And so, when I did a little research about it, with this bill, as Todd has mentioned, it allows virtually anyone, including religious organizations, employers, business, foster care, adoption services, housing institution, healthcare organization, clergy, and even government officials to discriminate against other people, that's what kills me, other people, in the name of religious liberty. Why does it necessarily have to say other people? Aren't we
Yeah, that's interesting. It just says other people.
Right.
They just open it wide to whoever, you know. It doesn't make any sense at all. Everyone has a right in America to their beliefs.
Exactly.
Right? They have their right to beliefs. What they don't have a right to is to criminal behavior. Discrimination is criminal behavior.
So with this bill, if it passes and I choose not to provide services for you and you want to sue me, this bill is protecting me because you can't sue me because I've refused to service you.
Exactly. We have ever since the Civil Rights Act, what we decided was when you create a business that's open to the public, it's got to be open to the public.
Right.
Right. A private club can discriminate all day long. Right? Because it's a private club. We're saying who gets to come to this private club. Your personal home, you can discriminate all day long.
Exactly.
But if you open a business and you say that it's open to the public, then you can't discriminate. And they're trying to give permission for these people who have public spaces to discriminate.
And also it's helping city officials like the Kim Davis in, what state was that?
Right, in Kentucky?
Kentucky.
Yeah.
If she refuses to issue a marriage license, they're protected under this law.
Exactly, and it spells that out, you
Yes.
know. when the fact is, we have 82 counties in Mississippi, is that right?
82, something like that, yeah.
And so we've had one person in all of these counties who was a clerk who did not want to do same-gender marriages, and so she resigned.
Exactly, that's all you gotta do.
That's all you gotta do. So this is making it so that as if it's making it seem like there's a whole lot of people that don't want to be doing this, all right? So there's, just think about how many times, if you're working at a county courthouse, that somebody comes up and asks for a marriage, but you know they shouldn't be married.
Mm-hmm. Right.
There's all kinds of reasons, because you're in a small community, you know they shouldn't be married. But as a government official, your personal prejudice and your personal opinion has nothing to do with their right to get married.
Exactly.
And most people in Mississippi, no, I'd say everybody working in those clerk's office right now knows that.
Mm-hmm.
They go to church on Sunday, and when they go to the courthouse on Monday, they see they're doing a different thing.
Right.
It's a different thing. They're not violating their conscience, by doing this. The person, even if you believe it's sinful, you're gonna say, go ahead, I'm gonna sign off on your sin and let you get married, because the government provides that freedom.
So some of them may feel like, if I'm signing off, because this is my job, and I sign off to give you this marriage license, I'm going to go to hell because I contribute to your sin.
Exactly. But I wonder how many times they check whether or not a person's been married before. Because I do remember Jesus saying, if you've been divorced and you get remarried, that's sin.
Mm-hmm.
Do they check the background to make sure you've been married?
Not.
All they got to make sure of is you're not currently married, so you're not committing bigamy, which is still a crime.
And then a lot of them believe that, I lost my train of thought. A lot of them think that I lost my train of thought. I really did. But go ahead.
Well, I mean, I think we've said it. We talked about the businesses, and we have some really strong, smart people in the Senate and in the state House of Representatives, and I heard some speeches on the floor of the representatives that really made me appreciate the people that are there. One of those was Representative Ed Blackman. He stood up and talked about the fact that biologically, he talked about biology. He said we can ignore the reality of how our bodies are made. And that's what this legislation does. It just ignores it. It ignores that every person that looks like a man may not be a man.
Right.
Every person that we have all this variety between some males look more like males and are more male in that they have more testosterone. Some have less. Females, there's all this variety in our gender. In our sex, and I want to make sure that's not the same as gender. Then I did some research this week and looked at these two syndromes. And we call them syndromes because they're just uncommon, that a person is born with just an X chromosome. But if a person is born with the X chromosome, usually it identifies as a female, the breasts don't develop, and they usually don't develop ovaries and can't have children. Okay. So it's a sex. Is that a man? Is that a woman?
Right.
That's called Turner syndrome. Then there's Klinefelter syndrome, which it's XXY. That man usually has a visible, their genitalia looks male. Their testes are usually small, but then they develop breasts.
Right, I've heard of that one.
So you've got breasts, you've got a penis. Is that a man? Is that a woman? Is that a male? Is that a female? Our biology is contrary to what they're trying to force on us.
So with that line in this bill that says biologically,
yes,
does this...
all it does is going to open up the state of Mississippi to lawsuits.
Pretty much. And I saw today where Missouri, it passed.
I didn't know that.
Yes.
Yeah.
After 39 hours of talking and going through, it passed in Missouri today. And it was about 3 or 4 o'clock when I got that on my phone.
Well, they use the word protecting freedom of conscience from government discrimination. The biggest irony of this, AnDerecco, you're telling us that you're protecting from discrimination when the ACLU and a whole team of other organizations put in front of them a bill that was civil rights protections for people based on race, gender, national origin. Guess where that bill is today that we proposed in 2016? It's in the garbage can.
Really?
They don't want to deal with that. They don't really want to protect from discrimination. The biggest form of government discrimination is in the fact that you have statewide agencies. You have all these state government employees that have no protection from being fired for a state job because they're a woman, because they might be black, because they might be too religious for the people that want them around, or they might not be religious enough. So all these ways you can fire people are still legal in Mississippi. That's against federal law.
But how does this, okay, we live here in Mississippi.
Yeah.
And we know how it looks to us. But I wonder, do the people that are representatives of this state see how outsiders, other states, they already look at Mississippi as being on the bottom anyway?
Well, thank goodness for Georgia. Georgia passed this bill last month. And after they passed it, 400 of the top businesses in Georgia came together to oppose the bill.
What bill was that?
It was the same bill.
The same bill? Oh.
Over the same kind of bill. But describing things the same way. There was supposed under the guise of religious protection, you know, florists and ministers and all this don't have to do, don't have to be forced to do these gay weddings. It's interesting. Ain't nobody forcing them.
Right. Right. If you don't want to perform it, I'm quite sure you can find somebody else. I'm an ordained minister. Right. I would be happy to do it.
Exactly.
You.
I've done since I think I've done 7 marriages.
Yeah.
You know, and since it was legalized, and you know, there's plenty of people. We don't have to worry about anybody getting sued because they wouldn't do a marriage. Yeah.
It reminds me of an episode on Noah's Ark some years ago when Chance wanted to get married to Eddie, and they went before the church board and said that they could get married, but it had to be in the fellowship hall. I hope I'm getting this right. Had to get married in the fellowship hall. Couldn't be in the sanctuary.
Wow. The
pastor could not perform the ceremony. And Chance said something that's always stuck with me. We don't want to be just tolerated.
Right. Right.
We want to be appreciated and welcomed. Don't just tolerate me.
Right. Well, so I think that's a really good story because that's a great example of the struggle that goes on in a congregation to try to deal with this.
Especially in Baptist faith.
There's several.
It's all of them, but you know, I grew up Baptist, so
you know that.
Yes.
Right? Yeah. I just even think, as a minister, you know, you said you were a minister. You said you noticed that I was minister. From a theological perspective, this is we know how damaging it is to people's spirituality when any belief is forced on somebody.
Right. So
the reason this is dangerous is because you're forcing a belief on other people. You're saying the whole state of Mississippi thinks that same-gender marriage is wrong.
It's wrong.
But you're going to use the power of the state to try to convince us of that? That's not how people come to understand things, you know, or God, you know. They don't come.
It's basically all about love. And there are some people out there who are in the positions of power that are married, but they have somebody on the side, and then they got another person on the side of that person, but they trying to make this decision for the whole entire state. But you know, we don't
have their names or the senators.
I'd rather not say that. I would rather keep that one under my hat.
Well, I think we should. I think again, you know, each person has their personal life, and
right.
we have the protection of the government. It's supposed to protect us from government intrusion. And once again, it says they call it government discrimination. There's nothing more discriminating to make a decision about those very personal and private decisions that each person needs to have the freedom to make and not have the government tell you that you're wrong.
Mhm.
You know, and again, our laws are set up so that if we're hurting somebody, the government can come along and says you're hurting somebody.
Right.
You know?
And I read where Representative Wooten said that the bill will give people the right to discriminate against those who don't share the belief that a marriage is between a man and a woman.
Mm-hmm.
Then Representative Gibson said that, I think you're wrong. This bill is just to protect discrimination for people who have the belief that marriage is in the union of a man and a woman.
And I don't understand. I do understand their political strategy. It's to create the idea that all these things are coming against people, so they'll get afraid that the government's coming to get them.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know of a single case of either a same-gender couple or any authority, sheriff, police officer, that's ever knocked on the door of a church and demanded that they marry somebody.
Right.
So we created a law for something that's not happening. And it's to create the idea that they're about to come get us.
Mm-hmm.
We had, this is a kind of a separate issue, I know you have more questions, but they passed another bill this session that says you're allowed to carry a weapon into a church.
I heard that. And I'm like, okay, you're really opening doors now.
Well, see, it's the whole premise is the church is under attack.
But the thing is about it,
attack.
several years ago, it's been in Mississippi, I know of, and it just made local news. Some of it didn't make national news, like the case that just happened in South Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
But where arguments happen in the church and people pulling out guns and start shooting and all this kind of stuff. But you know, that was an inside thing. And say if God forbid that something like South Carolina happens again,
Mm-hmm.
this person is protected because they have the right to carry a gun in the church, in a sense. What do you want to carry a gun in the church for?
I think that it's all built on that premise that Christians are under attack. I heard a man named Mr. Trump speak the other night, and he said Christians are under attack from all the government, all these secular people. They're trying to attack the church. So if you put in people's mind that you're under attack, the first thing you think is, I need a gun to protect me, right?
Right.
So it's really getting out of hand, because the most dangerous person is a person who fears things that aren't real, you know, and then you're going to give a gun to somebody and tell them that they need to look out because you never trust who comes to church. To me, that's the opposite. I remember from the book of James, it says, you show favoritism because a person comes into your church and looks wrong, and you're not kind to them because they look poor, but then somebody comes along and looks rich, and you give them the seat of honor. The book of James says that's one of the most wicked things you can do. But now they're going to say, you got to look out for people sneaking in your church, you got to shoot. It's the opposite of what hospitality is.
Okay.
So.
Okay. We're going to stop right there and
Okay.
take a quick break, and we will come right back.